Okay, here is where we are going to understand CSS way more, how it works. My throat hurts a bit, so I apologize if you're not gonna hear me in a bit, but I need to take a break a bit after this one. But you're not gonna know that because, yeah, you can just watch the next video and it's like, oh, 3 days passed. Okay, anyways, let's move on. So I kept this as simple as possible. I just have a H1 here and a P tag. Okay, so take a look. If I select that H1 and I change that color to coral, okay, we have that nice coral color. What happens when we write H1 again here and we say color cornflower blue? Well, the color changes to cornflower blue. Why is this happening? Well, CSS works from up to down, okay? It reads the first one, it says, okay, H1 should be coral. And then goes, and gets to H1 again and says, okay, color should be cornflower blue. So the last style always gets applied. Okay, if we select the same thing, the one further down is the one gonna be applied. So if I write H1 again and change this again, it's gonna change. Cyan, okay? So it's cyan now, but if I move this up here, well, cornflake is gonna, cornflake? I keep saying cornflake. Cornflower blue is gonna be the one that's gonna be applied to, okay? However, okay, so we know that it goes from up to down and the last one gets selected. Okay, what happens if I add a class to this? I'm gonna say class of header, okay? And then we go in here and I just write header and we change the color to cornflower again, like this. Save, okay, that's blue. That's what we expected, right? Because we read it from up to down. But what happens if I move this up here? Well, is it gonna change to coral? No, it's still cornflower blue. Why is this happening? Well, the reason why this is happening is because the class has a bigger priority over the element selector. And a good way you can see this is just by hovering over the element. And you're gonna see that the selector specificity is 0, 0, 1, whereas this one is 0, 1, 0. So the one further on the left is gonna be more and more important. Okay, so this is 0, 0, 1. This is 0, 1, 0. So what is 1, 0, 0? Well, 1, 0, 0 is an ID. That's the most valuable one because it's the most unique one. So if I add an ID to this of head, I'm just going to say head like this. If I say head and I apply a color of dark red, now this is going to be the most important one. It doesn't matter where this is. It can stay here, it can stay here, it can stay here. It doesn't matter. This is the least important one, 0, 0, 1. This is secondary, 0, 1, 0. And this is the most important one, 1, 0, 0. However, this is mostly what you are going to encounter. These three in here. But there are certain cases where you might have a style on the element. If you have a style on this element, so I'm going to say style, color, and I'm just going to say black and hit enter. This, you can imagine it as this having a greater priority over everything that you have here in CSS, okay? It's more important than everything you have, whether it's H1, whether it's a class, whether it's an ID. As soon as you have the style directly applied to the H1, that's gonna win. However, there's one more. Oh my goodness, what did they do there? They smoked something, probably. But there's one more. If you have no idea how to change a style and you cannot find in your code what's happening, what you can do on whichever element you want, you can add a exclamation point important like this. And this is basically gonna override everything. This is like the last solution. This is not good to do. You don't want to add this important usually, almost never. But this overrides everything. So it doesn't matter. This is kind of like a fifth level of specificity. that you can add important. But generally, what you're going to be sticking to is h1 class and this one. Okay, you're never going to use this important. Okay, so let's remove this. You're better off trying to figure out why this important is not working, right? Because the problem here is, if later on, let's say later on we're gonna work on something and I want to change something about that h1. I want to change the color to maybe a dark slate blue and it's not working. Okay, I'm gonna select it like this with a header, not working. So you're gonna mess around and try all of these different selectors and you cannot get this to change. So again, to override this again, you're gonna have to say important here. So it's gonna override the one on top because again, we are reading it from top to bottom. So it gets really messy. So try to ignore this, try to ignore styling it with important and also ignore styling it in the H1 here. The only ones you should be sticking to are normal selector like this, class and ID, and that's gonna make everything super clear on which is how important. Okay, even if you have multiple classes, the one that's below is still the one that's gonna apply. However, we can also select elements. I'm gonna show you a new one that we haven't covered so far. What if I do H1 active like this? So basically I want to select only the classes that are H1. So now if I say color deep pink, wow, that's a new one, deep pink, it changes and I can even move it up here. Why is that? Well, if we take a look again, the 0, 1, 0, the one in the middle is the class, so that gets 1 point. However, here we also have the element. So 0, 1, 1, right? The first 0 being ID, the second 0 being the class, and the third one being the element. So here we define specifically that I want to select the H1 specifically that have a class of active. So it's a bit more specific than just throwing out a random class because, hey, we can have this active class technically on anything we want. I can add the active on here. Class active, okay? So I can have the same thing, but that doesn't mean that I want to apply that deep pink to it. So this is more specific.